So if you look at MySQL database management system, it's open source relational database management system, we call it. And then this is very commonly used relational database system, which you can use with other dynamic programming languages like PHP. So usually when we create many database-driven web applications, we will use MySQL as the database management system. Together with, we can use PHP, for example, which is a common use, but there are several others that you can use like Perl or Python. But if you take it as a set of web application softwares, we call it stack. We use what we call LAMP or SAMP as the application stack. So MySQL is part of these commonly used stacks. Another thing why we have chosen for MySQL is many popular websites. If you take Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, for example, it uses MySQL database. Okay, so having said that, in MySQL, usually what we create is related tables. We already know that the table we have set of rows and columns. So one example is given. We create a database on a set of books, and here we will list authors, title, and the type of the book, as well as the year of publications. Right. And then you can notice that these are like, different types of data that we are going to hold in a table. Now, when we want to use MySQL, you can go to MySQL website. You can just download only the MySQL. You can run it like that. But then if you're thinking of practically implement use of MySQL as a part of database application, where you want to build web application, for example, maybe you could use already available application software stack, and SAMP is one of those stacks where the MySQL can be installed. So since most of you are beginners of using databases, I thought of we'll start with the SAMP. So with the SAMP, we are going to have MySQL, and also like we set up the Apache web server, and under that we can also have PHP. So everything is included, but that will be our starting point. So let me demonstrate how we can set up SAMP first place, so that we can start our lab session directly. Right. To download SAMP in your machine, so we are going to use SAMP, and then with that we can get MySQL. Sometimes if you're wondering like why we are getting MariaDB here, the reason for this is there was a move on releasing MySQL in commercialized later, and then the same code base continued as a free and open source version with the name of MariaDB. So that's the reason why, although we use MySQL, sometimes in the implementation, you might see we will use MariaDB as the database. Right. So having said that, let's go to download page. And then, yeah, we can select the version which suits for you. There are several versions that you can actually select it. In my case, I have Windows machine. So I can use, maybe I will select the latest version to download this. Right. Downloading this might take some time. The size of the file is about like 150 megabytes, depending on your requirement. But don't worry, I mean, you can do this offline or later time. But this is just to, show you the steps so that you are comfortable with installing the whole setup. Right. Okay. So this will take while SAMP is downloading, let me explain the process. So once you actually download the installation file, we will install as a package. We install everything starting from the web server, and then the database, and then we have dynamic programming language like PHP, everything together so that you can develop dynamic web pages easily with this setup. Once you download and install, you can open up the SAMP control panel, and control panel looks like this. And depend on your requirement, you can start different services. Right now, we are going to focus only on MySQL database. So we will open MySQL database. If everything works fine, usually it should, highlighted in green color so that MySQL is getting ready. Now, once MySQL is get ready, now we can access the MySQL server, which means we have access to the database server where we can actually create the database. Now, how we are going to create the database is we are going to use a command line, which means usually we are going to use commands to communicate with the web server. That's the steps that we need to follow. Now, the very first one is connecting to the database. As I told you earlier, we can use command line DOS prompt, where we can go to the installation folder. And then once you go there, you can type the command MySQL -u root and -p, which means that you are going to connect to the database server as a root user, and then with the password -p, which is to say you use the password for that. Now, once you do that, now you are ready. So which means you can connect to the, database. Okay, once you connect to the database, the next setup is we need to learn MySQL commands, which you want to use to various tasks. The first few things we are going to focus on how to create a database. For example, create is the command that we are going to use a create database. And once you say create, and then you can first create a database, and then you can connect to the database. And then under the database, you can create several tables depending on your requirement. So these are the set of commands that we are going to practice. depending on our requirement. Okay. So here is the first set of commands that we are going to discuss in today's session. So there are a few commands that you can use to see what is already in the database. Once you connect in the MySQL, you can type show databases to see like what are the already existing databases. Then once you figure out, okay, there are no databases with the name that you are going to create, then you can create a new database. So that's what you see here. We are going to create a new database called publications. So the command create database publication, we create a database to store about the publication details. Now, once you create the database, you have to start working on it. So we use the use keyword publication, which will use MySQL to use the publication database. And then you need to create tables, because relational database, what we have is relational tables. Now, creating a table, the structure will be look something like this. You start saying create table and you provide a name for that. And then you list all the fields together with their data types. Now, in our classics database, which we are going to use, we are going to keep track of, about the author, title, type, and year, right? So that we can translate into MySQL code like this. We can say create table and we provide the name for the table. And then we will list the field name. In the first field name is the author, and this is the data type. I will discuss data type lately, but for the time being, what this means is this will say that we are using a data type called varchar, variable character, which consists of maximum of 128, which means, what do you mean by variable character is depend on the size of the author, we are going to allocate the required space. The maximum is 128. Similar to that, title also varchar 128. Type is varchar 16. We have limited the maximum number of characters as 60. And finally, year is a fixed one. We use char with 4, which means we are allocating 4 digits to store the year information. So that's how we are going to start. Okay, now I'm going to get back to our installation procedure. So we have successfully downloaded the SAM. Okay, I will go to the folder. Right, so and then I will double click on the file. Which will ask me to allow installation. Which ideally should start the installing. Let me check. Right. In this one, it says it's already installed. Okay, no, antivirus. Yeah, and ask whether to continue. I will say yes. Okay, so I will say okay. So the setup will start like this. I'm going to remove some of them. You can go next and install everything. But I don't need some of these, so I will remove them. MySQL, I need it. It's already highlighted, but other information I'm going to remove because I don't need, some of these. So I will remove them, but make sure that MySQL is selected, and then I will go to next. I have to select a folder to install SAMP. So I'm going to, the default folder is SAMP XAMPP. I have several versions because I'm already installed. So one thing I could do is I will add 5173 to for me to understand that this is for the course I am installing. So I have slightly modified this, and I will go to next. And the other things are general. You can click next and everything is ready to install, and it start installing. Right now, during the setup, it will set up the web server, Apache, and MySQL and PHP, depending on what I have selected. And then we will also have PHP MyAdmin, which I can use graphical version of this in case if you want to create the database visually, right? Okay, so once we finish this, hopefully we can go to control panel and open up MySQL. And then when the MySQL is successfully started, we can connect to the MySQL web server using a command line. You can use actually graphical user interface as well, but I want you to, learn these connecting databases through command line. So we are going to use command line to connect this. Right. So ideally now we are at the last part of the installation. Okay, in my case, it says setup has finished installing SAMP on your computer. Do you want to start the control panel now? I will select it and I will say finish. Okay, so this is the panel that I have, told you in the beginning. Right now, I'm interested in logging into MySQL. So I'm going to click start here, which I'm trying to start the MySQL server. Right. Ideally, if you have no errors, you will notice that the MySQL is highlighted in green, and the port is also selected as 3306, assuming that this port is not used by any other application. So if you come to this stage, it means now you are ready to connect with the database, right? That means server is set up. MySQL is already running in the background. So we can start using this, right? Right. The next step is we can take command line. You can type here CMD, and then you can get a command prompt. Right. Let me increase the size a bit so that you can see clearly my command line. Right now, I'm going to go to my uh, database. Uh, it means I will, go to my folder. So the ideally, I have to go back. CD double dot will go one step back. And now I'm in C. If you remember, my folder is CD XAMPP. What I typed is 5173. So I will go inside and then I will go to MySQL. I will go to bin. So now I'm in the MySQL directory. Now what I'm going to do is now I will type MySQL minus U root and minus P, which means I'm trying to connect the MySQL database as a root user with a password. And I will just type empty password. And it's a success. If it is a success, you should see a welcome screen like this saying that welcome to the MariaDB monitor and blah, blah, blah. And then you will see a prompt where MariaDB and just waiting for our command. Assuming that you are connected to the MySQL database, you can see what is already existing. There are a few commands that you can use. One of the first command is you can use show database command, databases. And you can see these are the existing databases available in MySQL. So you can say information schema, MySQL, performance schema, PHP MyAdmin, and test. So let's first use existing database. Let's say we will use test database. We can say use test. And when we say use test, you can see the prompt has changed from MariaDB none to MariaDB test, which means now we have selected test database. Now, under this, we can see what are the tables available. For example, one of the commands that you can use is show tables, which will show the any databases tables. So in this particular case, it says empty set, which means there are no tables inside. Okay, now let's practice some of the commands that we have actually discussed, right? So I told you, like in our example, we are going to create a database called publications. So let's create now. If you say show databases, right now we have only these 5 databases. Now let's create a database. Create database publications. When you create, it says if it is successful, it says query OK, one row affected. And if you type the command again, show databases, you can see now we have 6 databases where publication is inside. Now let's use the publication database. We will say command use publications, and you will notice that now the prompt has changed MariaDB publications, which means we are now inside the publications database. Let's show tables. We don't have any tables. Okay. Let's create a one, right? Okay. These are called SQL statements, and we are going to discuss in detail. But for the time being, let's create a simple table called classics. So the command start with create, table classics, and with the open bracket. Actually, you can continue typing it, but I'm going to break this. And each row I will type uh, the field name and with the data type. So the first field is author with the varchar. It's a data type. And then the maximum characters, I will set it to 128. Then title, again, variable character varchar, 128. Then type varchar, we'll set to 16. Then year, it's a fixed one. We'll say char, we'll fix to 4. Right. If it is successful, when you press enter, you will say query OK, 0 rows affected. And when you say show tables, you should now see we have one table inside publications called classics. Now we see we have already created. So if you want to just see the details of the database table that we have created, you can use a command called describe. And if you say describe classics, you can see the detail is given, right? What you have noticed so far is when you are creating a table structure, we normally have a column name and then we have to specify data type. So you have to have a good understanding of what data types are allowed in MySQL. So let's start with the character data type, or we call char data type. Simply, when you want to store string data, we can use char data type. And usually when we type char, within bracket, you can specify a number n. For example, if you want to specify particular number of characters, you can specify with n. For example, if you say char 5, you can store 5 characters, 1 byte for each character. For example, it uses 5 bytes, right? The point that you need to remember is when you use char, it's fixed. For example, if you use char 57, and even if you type goodbye, which is less number of characters, it uses 57 bytes. That's what you need to remember. It exactly use n bytes when you specify n. Remember that n should be less than 255. Now, when you should use char is if you exactly know how many characters you are going to use, and if it is fixed, better you go with char. For example, you have already seen to represent year, we have used char 4 because we are using 4 characters. But many situations, we want to use variable characters because we don't know how many characters we are going to save. For example, first name, last name. It really depends on the data that we enter. So whenever you have a situation like this, we should use varchar or variable character. N will specify the maximum amount you can have. That N can go up to 65,535. But remember that it depends on how many letters we store there. So, for example, if you say varchar 7, and if you specify, if you save the word hello, it uses 5 bytes. And the second one, if you say varchar 100, and if you say only goodbye, it uses 7 bytes because it uses only 7 characters. So that's just to understand. So character data type. Okay, then similar to that, if you want to use some binary information like images or any other things with the database, usually we can use binary. And same like earlier, if you want to use variable number, then we can use var binary. Okay, the second data type is most commonly used data types, especially when you want to store numbers. Remember the data type, when you select the data type, you have to make sure that it's appropriate. For example, depend on the data type you use, it will use different number of bytes, right? So if you want to save some space in the database, you have to carefully select the data type. So when you say numerical data type, there are few data types we can discuss, starting from tiny integer, small integer, medium integer, integer, big integer, float, and double and real. Right. Now, when you say tiny integer, the number of byte it use or the storage space it use is 1 byte. For small int, it's 2 bytes. Medium int is 3 bytes. The maximum will be big int and double, where it uses 8 bytes each. Okay, now this is the interesting part. Now, depending on the data type you use, the range of numbers you can store will be different, right? So, for example, if you select tiny int, and if you are going to say signed, what you mean by signed is, if you are going to store both positive and negative data, we can say signed. So the range of numbers that you can store will go from minus 128 to plus 127. If you say unsigned, which means that you store only the positive values, or you don't store signed, it can go from 0 to 255. So basically you can store 256 with 8 bits. That's the understanding. So similar to that, if you go with small int, it uses 2 bytes. If you use sign, it can go from minus 32,768 to 32,767. If it is signed, if it is unsigned, it can go from 0 to 65,535. So that's the range of numbers we normally use. So the first few numbers you can see that we can use to store integer values. The next two is float and double, which we can use to store numbers with decimal point. For example, pi is 3.14. If you want to store pi, then you better use float or double, depend on your requirement. Okay. Right. So when we create a database, we use the term create database table name, and then we can use different fields. So if you want to use, let's say, the positive numbers only, then we can normally say, you type the field, we can say int, and we can say unsigned, which indicates that you are going to store only positive values only, so that you will have a larger range. Because if you say minus 32,760 into 32,000, whereas the maximum is 32,000. But if you say unsigned, it can go from 0 to 65,535, right? So that's the idea. And at the same time, if you want to have a fixed width, what do you mean by fixed width? Now, for example, sometimes when you want to represent numbers with the zero field, like when you say number 1, let's say we want to represent like 0, 0, 0, 1, not that's just 1 with fixed set. So that means you have to have 4 digits, but if the number is not there, not represented, you have to zero field. So 1 is represented as 0, 0, 0, 1. In that particular case, we can define it like this. We can use a field name int within brackets, the number, and then you can say 0 field. Right. Okay, so that's about the numerical data type. We discussed 2 types, string and then numbers. Third one, if you want to use date and times, right? Depending on whether you want to use both date and time or time only, you can use different data types in MySQL. If you use date and time, you can use both the date as well as the time in this format given. If you need only the date, and this is the format. If you need only the timestamp, this is a form. Time, this is a form. Year, okay, so this is the format. So these are like some of the existing data types for date representation. Right. Okay. Few more commands before we are going to discuss in detail about how to create table. Now, sometimes we want to create some fields which we want to automatically increase. So for example, let's say we have a column called ID. And then column, let's say we want to start from 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, right? So that means automatically we want to start with 1, then the second time we want to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Now for that, in SQL, we have what we call auto increment. So we can say, we can add an ID, which is integer type, unsigned. When you say unsigned, remember I told you, you have on the starting from 0 up to that particular number. And then we will say auto increment. When you say auto increment, right, we can automatically increase the ID. We have not discussed alter yet. This alter table means once you create the table, if you want to change anything, the SQL command we use is called alter table. Right. So if you break down the discussion, int unsigned is we already discussed. We are taking integer, right? And then we are going to focus only on positive values. And there's a term called not null. We say that you have to have some value for each and every column. Auto increment meaning like you will increase the value automatically, right? So the key is we have selected this as a key because you can use it to search record based on that information. So in case if you want to update our original table, here is what we can do, right? So we can say create table classics, author varchar 120, title varchar 120, type varchar 16, and year char 4. And the last line is the new addition. We say ID is int unsigned, not null, auto increment, and it's a key. So these are the information. If you want to remove this ID, simply you can alter table classics. You can say drop ID. So you can, put information like this. Right. Right. Now, let's look at what we have done so far. We have created a database called publications. And then under that, we create a table called classics. Okay, let's uh, insert some data to our table, right? So that's what I'm going to explain. So let's start with database itself, right? Right now, you can see describe classics we have used. Now, when you want to see what is inside the data, we can use select all from classics. What it means is we are going to look at what data is available under the table classics. Right now, we don't have any. So it says empty set. So let's enter one data point. So we can say insert into classics. And then you can have what information you are going to enter: author, title, type, and year. Let's provide the values. Mark Twain, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Fiction, and we'll say 1876. Okay, I added one data and it's success. So let's select. You can observe that the data is included in the table. Right now, in the classic table, we have one row. I have included two data points. So you can see I have now included all the data about 5 publications with all the details. Right. Now that we have learned how to create a simple table in MySQL and also add in data, and also we display what is in the table. Few more commands which we will help us to learn MySQL. For example, let's say if you want to change the name of the table, then we have to alter the table. So the command alter table meaning that we are going to change the table classics, and we use the command called rename to rename it to pre-1900, which will change the table name from classics to pre-1900. Similar to that, let's say we want to change a particular data type. Let's say here we had 4 characters, char4. Let's say we want to go with small int. So the modification is again alter table classics modify. And this time when you say modify, we specify the attribute together with its data type. Now let's say we want to add a new, right? New column. In that particular case, we can use alter table classics add pages, small int, unsigned, which we will add attribute called pages. Right? So this is how we can use some of these commands. Similar to that, let's say you want to change the type, the column type to category. So in this particular case, we will say alter table classics change type. We will make it category and with the data type. In this particular case, we say varchar 60. Similar to that, let's say you want to remove a particular column, you can say drop pages, right? And then here we can also like how to create a table simply with a one attribute and then removing it, we call drop table. Right. So let me show you like some of these commands, right? So for example, let's add the pages into our database. So let me take the right command. And what I'm going to do is look at what we have right now, right? Right now we have 4 columns. We are going to add one. So adding to existing one, we say alter table, add, and the column name I'm going to say pages, small int, unsigned. Okay, I forgot to type the table name. It should be alter table classics. Right. Now you can see I have changed the table and then I have added new column, right? So if you say previous command, now you can notice that there's a new column is added code pages, and we have null values, because null meaning in SQL is nothing. It's no value, right? So that's the meaning of this. Okay. So that's again how to use that. Now, similar to this, if you want to remove this, you can simply say drop. Okay. For example, I can say alt table classics drop pages. And if you look at what we have right now, the column pages is actually removed from the table. Okay. Let me demonstrate deleting a table. So right now, if you look at show tables, we have only one table. Let me create another one. Create table disposable, and we will say trash int. We will have only one. So if you look at again show tables, you can see disposable. You can, if you want, you can say describe disposable. Yes, that's what we have. Okay. Now let's drop this, right? When you say show tables, you can see two tables now, classics and disposable. To remove a table, we can use drop table, disposable. And if you say show tables, so it's not anymore. Not anymore. Right. Finish up to this point. Now, when we create tables, every table we have to have a unique attribute, which we call primary key. Now, in the classic table, we have not included, such a attribute, and we are going to add it right now. So adding it, unique value, we have to alter table. So the first command, what it does, it, get adding attribute called ISBN with 13 characters. And then we have to update each and every record, because we want to have include the ISBN for each and every record. The right now, how we did this, since we have unique years, we attach this to update our table. And then once we did that, we define ISBN as the primary key, right? That's what we did. But generally, we don't have to do like this when we are defining the very beginning. If we clear about exactly what our table is and the primary key, you can define the very beginning, which I will show you how we could do this. For example, we could have done like this. We could have done like this, which means we could have put classics, author, title, category here with ISBN, and then finally defining as a primary key, right? But since we have already done without the primary key or ISBN in the beginning, let's follow this procedure, right? So let's get together, update our table. So I'm going to get our database, right? Now, if you have describe our classics table structure, it looks like this. We have only 4 fields. We are going to add another one. So we will say alter table, classics, add ISBN, and with the char 13, which specified the 13 characters. Now, when I say describe classics, you can see I have added ISBN, right? The right now, you can notice you don't have any values. So null values is also there. Similar to that, if you say select all from classics, you can notice the ISBN is already there, right? So that's the first step. Okay, now let's look at adding values for each of these records. So if you look at select all from classics, you will notice that ISBN is empty. Let's add one at a time. So I'm going to use update command. I'm going to update classics set ISBN, and I will provide the value 978 159 818 4891, where, okay, here, this is for the first record. So I will set this as 1876. Now you can notice that we have added the records for the first instance. So let's do the same for everything. So I'm going to say update classics set ISBN equals, I'm going to give the second record 978 058 250 6206, where year equals, so I'm setting the second record. Now you can notice I have updated the second one. Let's continue the same. Okay, we have changed the third record as well. Now it should look like this. Command will be the same. I hope you can get this down. Let's put the last one. Right. So let's finish up to this point. Now, with the addition of ISBN is a unique values for each of these records, we can set the ISBN as the primary key for this table. So let's update that, alter table, classics, we say add primary key, and we say ISBN. By doing so, we make it's a primary key. It's a unique value. And now if you look at describe, you can notice that if you focus on the last field is ISBN with 13 characters, no null values, and it's a primary key, right? So with that, we set up. Ideally, if you plan well in the beginning, not like what we did, this exercise is just to understand various different MySQL commands. And if you plan well in the beginning, you could have, defined the structure properly in the very beginning. For example, you can say create table classics with author, title, category, year, and ISBN, and finally specifying ISBN as a primary key. So with that said, this will be the end of today's session. Mainly, we focus on the implementation of relational database concepts using MySQL. We installed SAMP with MySQL, and then we created a database classics and we tried out various MySQL statements. So the next week, the plan is we are going to work on more than one table, combining multiple tables together, writing more complex queries to retrieve data, as well as things like how to define indexes for the table. So make sure that you practice and come with the SQL statements or the commands that we have discussed today. Right, having said that, let me finish for today. And